So I am here with Risto, who I've gotten to know a little bit over especially the last few weeks to months, because you've jumped on a number of live streams. But I think the real impetus for me to reach out to you and say, "Hey, can we have a conversation?" was I said some things on a Nick Freerillian stream that you said surprised you. It was in regard to my own kind of personal, I call it political philosophy. I'm not using the right term there, probably, but it's the way I think about the world and in relation to government. I mean, I would say the word politics, but really what I'm talking about is the relationship between how I think of proper governance or proper government relative to ideal society. Or on one hand, it's the ideal society, but on the other hand, it's also the realistic, pragmatic society and the relationship between those two things. Um, but just the fact that I surprised you, that pleased me because it's good to know I can still surprise people now and again, even after they get to know me a bit. So here we are. Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself, Rista?
Yeah, I don't know. My name's Risto, or that's my nickname. Christopher is my full name. Um, Risto is the nickname with the middle part of the name. So you could be Chris, or you could be Topher, or you could be Risto. So some people I'd met started calling me that, and I went with it. I liked it. Um, it's actually the Finnish shortened version of my name, but I'm not Finnish at all. That's a long story. I won't go down that rabbit trail. Um, yeah, and I don't even know how I found the corner. Maybe through something, probably one of Paul's videos, like most things. And then similar to a lot of other people, you find this, oh, there's these other channels, and I love Paul's stuff, but honestly, I find some of the smaller backwaters of the corner the most interesting to me. Um, it's it's pretty unique on the internet, especially in the conversational uh, the way that the conversations happen. Actually, Luke had a stream today where I should have written down what he said, but Luke said, like, he's interested in people that are coming to the conversations with humility, that are open to changing their mind about what their position is, and and I think that there's also like a common respect between the person you're speaking with. The agreement isn't the primary measure for the community in the corner. Now, agreement I think is needed, um, and good, but it's not primary. So for myself, COVID was kind of intensified time of religious searching and interacting with people in the Catholic, Orthodox, LDS world. And I grew up Protestant. I still would say I'm Protestant, whatever that means. I don't even know Protestant, evangelical. I have no idea. Maybe I'm not. But during that time frame, I found that I enjoyed interacting more. I would enjoy interacting more with someone who is an atheist, but open to finding the truth and looking for the truth, than I would from someone who like theologically aligns with where I'm at, but is just closed-minded and super dogmatic about everything. That's not to say that I don't appreciate when people hold a strong opinion about something. I do appreciate that also. Um,
Yeah, I that resonates with me because I think that's a common element of people in the corner, at least people who last and are received by other people, I would say the spirit that they're in, it's kind of like the way I think about that spirit is like I have greater faith in the Almighty than I do in my own beliefs relative to the Almighty. Um, so this is like I believe in God more than I believe in Catholicism. You know,
That's
which
good to
which is a
hear.
weird, yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to put in those terms. I don't think anyone, even within my tradition, could argue with that, could debate it, but um, but that's the nature of what I believe. And but in order to engage that way, then like you said, I don't think you can have that level of humility without a level of faith. I think that humility is directly in proportion to the faith you have, in that if you're very uneasy about whatever's going on within you in your own life, in your own beliefs, if your own axioms are being um, changed or are uneasy, then you have very good reason for defending or holding on to the few axioms that you've got. Um, and so the people that I have encountered in the corner who I really like, I tend to really like them in proportion to that amount of humility combined with faith. But I think those two things um, are very similar, or at least closely aligned. Um, there is the type of person, right? Maybe it's called righteous self-righteousness, that does have strong faith and yet feels compelled to, let's say, judge out of love so that others might be saved. There is that type of person. Um, or at least I believe they exist. I could be wrong about that. Like maybe it really is a self-righteous, judgmental thing every step of the way. And
Well, you're that person. You are a dad. That is
mm,
a dad has to do that.
that's true. Yeah, but how I treat a fellow adult is very different than how I
Right.
how I treat my daughter.
Oh, right, right. But like I mean you're in a religious tradition that calls other adults father. So,
Yeah, no, that's true. Um, and I submit myself to that tradition insofar as I submit myself to being deferential to the existing hierarchical structures that exist within that. Um, yeah, like I've been wanting to start. I'll just give a really quick example. I've been wanting to start an estuary at my Catholic church, and for about 7 years now, maybe even 8 years, I've been doing this Bible study with my church called Come Lord Jesus. And if you look up comelordjesus.com, that's actually it. Um, and and I really like the Bible study, but uh, we started a second group. So the first group I was just a member of. Second group I was the facilitator. And in that second group, loved the people in that, like, we would always get into these like personal stories. Like it'd always get personal, and I'd have to be like, no, no, come on, let's bring it back to the Bible study. And like for maybe a year or 6 months, like it's been growing within me. Like we have to start an estuary. But so like I've just been gently sprinkling those seeds at what estuary is. But like I've been doing it for months, the gentle sprinkling for like this Bible study I do Tuesday nights. And then it was the day before Charlie Kirk's assassination. It was the Tuesday before the assassination where the stories were so intense that I was like, that's it. And it was maybe a week or two after Midwestuary. And it was like, that's it. I have to start this. Like I'm gonna, so I told them like we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it on October, the first Monday of October. Da 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 to like spread the word. We're gonna like I'm setting a date. We're doing it here. Da da da. Da. And I had been sprinkling it with my pastor also for months. I'm like, I want to do this ministry. Da da. And and my Catholic priest pastor said like he's like, so what's it about? And I'm like, well, it's about having heavy conversations in a light way. It's about having these meaningful. So, and he's like, so what do you talk about? Or he's like, can you give me an example? And maybe it's the Holy Spirit that popped into my head. And I said, personal loss. And he's like, oh yeah, yeah, we do need a place to talk about personal loss like this. But then as soon as I committed to the date and the group and we started, then the pastor said to me, wait, Neal, wait, we gotta present this to the parish council and just get it because it's a brand new ministry. And I, in talking to him, I said, absolutely, like, and I said to him, ultimately, if you say no, like, I understand, I will respect that decision and da 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 da. But went before the parish council yesterday evening, and I gave my 5 minute elevator pitch. And my 5 minute elevator pitch was something like this. It was like, we have all these older, established people and families that are part of our church. And for many of them, or for most of them, their children have either moved away or have deconstructed. And so their children are no longer in our church. But we have new families, we have younger people that are coming into our church and they've got the vertical, they're going to mass, they're going to reconciliation confession, they're there, like they care, but they're not connected within the church. And I said, you know, years ago, this would be done at a bar, this would be done at the town square, but we've lost the de facto because it's this now. We've lost the de facto. How do we communicate? And I said to them, I really hope that this is a means of stitching together our younger generations and our older generations across. Because I invite them to the Bible study, the younger folk. They don't stick around. They come to one or two and they're like, yeah, okay, and they don't stick around. And then also potentially inviting other people who are lapsed Catholics and so I'm being a little bit more deliberate about it that I am Jesus smuggling with it. I'm not neutral in estuary. I do care that people are brought to a stronger faith. But I said to them that, if I can't do this alone, but if I have a core group of like 4 or 5 people from our Bible study and we really know each other really well and we're used to having deep conversations and we trust one another, then anyone that comes in from the outside and might, try to derail the conversation, it's going to be a lot harder for them to do that if we've got 4 or 5 kind of core members that are used to relying on each other and used to guiding the conversation. So I presented this to our parish council and they were really enthusiastic about it. So we're going to start it in November. And I guess what I'm saying is like, and if they said no, I would have stopped unless the Holy Spirit comes knocking or I have a dream or something or where it says like, Neal, you got to do this at the library or something like this. Okay. But like, I would have absolutely respected their decision any way, shape, or form. So I don't know where that comes from. At least for me, well, okay, I could say where it comes from for me. I have so many other things going on in my life. Like I've had this conversation with guys. Sorry for talking so much, Risto.
No, don't
Um,
apologize.
I've had so many other things going on in my life that like, and I've had this conversation with God where I'm like, if something's not meant to me, just let me know. Like he could close like 2 or 3 doors on me. That would be absolutely fine. And and I think that's especially in a time of great uncertainty that we're now in. We don't know the things that are going to stick and the things that are going to die. And we just don't know. And so I think I approach my life in much the same way that like I tend to give time and attention, or let me put it this way. The proportion of time and attention that I'm able to give to people in my life that need that time and attention is the proportion to which I am a good Christian. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, but that's not on most people's bingo card.
Mm.
Um, like you don't, if you hear people talking about Christianity these days, I mean, it does exist in some corners, but um, but that's not usually very high on the list of important things. It's, whatever the theological takes are, how it's practiced on the Sunday morning, um, what your political takes are. Um, those are usually, front and center. But, I mean, Jesus pairs loving God and loving our neighbor is right together. And then I think it's Paul that puts loving your fellow Christian as the highest priority in the loving your neighbor, except for perhaps maybe your immediate family. But it's supposed to be like way up there, um, probably even above acts of charity. I don't know. That's a strong statement. I'm not sure, but maybe. Um, and I don't know if you've followed any of Francis Chan's work. Um, so he's an was an evangelical megachurch pastor and a popular speaker and book author, one of the kind of superstar guys. Um, but a few years back, I started kind of going on this journey. I was bored during church one Sunday morning, and I started asking myself, like, why do we do what we do? Why are we here? What's the purpose of all this? And but around that same time, he was going on a journey, and there was like a gang member, a young gang member who became a Christian and started going to his church, and he ended up he stopped going, and it was a large church, but apparently Francis saw him sometime and asked, like, "Hey, I haven't seen you. Like, you haven't been going. What's up?" And he said, "Well, when I was in the gang, all the other members had my back, and I thought it would be like that in Christianity, but then I found out that wasn't really the case. So he left." Um, so then Francis started, thinking about that and thinking about like how much of what he was doing in his megachurch in Southern California kind of centered around him, like a cult of personality. He even says that if Jesus started a church at the same time, his church would have been bigger than Jesus's. Um, and I think he tried to kind of he had like a series of sermons about that, about the connecting with each other part of things, and he tried to kind of steer things in that direction with the church that he's the lead pastor and founding pastor of. But I think he found some difficulty with that. Um, and I think some of that difficulty is so much of just what everyone's expectations are. If you have an expectation, especially a large group of people, of this is what it means to be a part of a church, or to go through the activities or the motions of being a part of a church, it's hard to shift people's perspective on that. Um, and so, I think they probably had small groups and everything, so they were probably okay with no one was probably gonna call him to repentance for saying we need strong fellowship. But I think he was like, this needs to be even more central than we're making it. And so as he was going on that journey, he eventually stepped down from being the lead pastor of his church and went and I don't know if they sold everything and went and spent time in Asia, and then but ended up coming back to California and starting a network of house churches in San Francisco. Um, so, and then our family, we've been on kind of a little bit of a similar journey. Um, I think it's I think it's hard to overemphasize how important that connection is with each other. Um, but to be honest, it's hard to find. Uh, it- it's easy. Like I'm probably in a stage of like kind of just discouraged about that and kind of have checked out for quite a while trying to find something like that. It's not a good excuse. Um, I probably should just be out there where if involved somewhere and at least trying something like you're doing.
Yeah, I think, I really feel for the people that are trying to find a church home because I never had that problem. Like once I'm in on something, I'm all in on it, for better or for worse. Well, that's not always true. I started a I started a Discord. This was like 3 years ago, and then maybe 4 years ago now, and it reached a point where I'm like, nope, this is doing more harm than good, and it was related to video game development, and so I decided to shut down the Discord. But even that, I like tried to do deliberately. I'm like, okay, it's gonna shut down on this date. Does someone want to create a Discord that everyone can move over to? And people complained, and I'm like, well, if you reach consensus on the Discord that you want to move to, but this bar is closing, you can't stay here. So,
It's closing time.
yeah, yeah. Um, but for me, it was, when I became a Christian, when I had my experience, and it was obvious because my wife's family and they're all cradle Catholics, very strong in their faith, and so I was just gonna join that church. Ironically, that church has since closed because we merged with another church, and now I am more tied in with that other church that we merged into than my wife's family. Like they're still tied into it, but like there is some feeling like the act of the closing the original church has kind of weakened their ties to the existing structure of the new church. Um, Whereas for me, it would be nice if more people thought like me. And that but because the way I think is like, what does it mean to be a Christian? What it means to be a Christian is you're going to lose everything you have and you're going to be persecuted for what you believe. And you're supposed to do that joyfully. Like that's what it means to be a Christian. That is suicidal by any measure of the world. Or really, so like my church being taken away from me, I'm like, yeah, this like given I wasn't born and raised in the church, but I actually think if I was, I would have the same attitude of like, yeah, like this is what it means to be a Christian. Like, okay, that's gonna be taken away from me. Like, and but most people don't have that attitude. Most people do not like when things are taken away from them. I'm not saying I like it either, but like I don't know. And some when I say this kind of stuff, a lot of people say that well, I'm just fatalistic and I'm just like this or that. I don't think I am though, because I'm like actively trying to do various things. I just don't have any expectation that those various things will succeed or last. The problem as I see it is like this is very hard, and I understand why this is hard because like someone like Jordan Peterson, who I respect immensely and I still respect him immensely, but back in the good old days, he would have said like you have to set a goal and you have to have a vision of your life. Like here's what you envision the life could be. And that gives you a path forward, and you set that goal, and then you stumble uphill. That's what he would say. You stumble uphill towards your goal or towards your cross or whatever it might be. And and I do believe that very much. But at the same time, I have this detachment that I just don't see in yeah. And I'm not all that detached. Like if something serious was taken away from me, it would hurt like hell. Like I, I'm under no illusions that I'm capable of being harmed. Like I'm absolutely capable of being harmed. I guess what I'm saying is I'm also under no illusions that as a Christian that's what Christ asks of us. And
Yeah.
for that reason, I'm also very hesitant to like earnestly ask people to become Christians because it's like when I sorry, I'm saying a lot here, but like when I look at Jesus's ministry for 3 years, what I see him doing is like sifting people constantly, meaning he like brings in lots of people and he does something that pushes most of them away. And he brings in lots of people and he does something that pushes most of them away. Like he goes back to his town and he says words that make them want to kill him. And then, or he says like, truly, truly, I say to you, unless you gnaw on my flesh, you will have no part on me. And like, this is a hard saying where, and you know, what the heck is he saying? And he says to Peter, like, are you also going to go away? And Peter, I could just imagine exasperated Peter in that moment going like, Lord, like, where else am I going to go? But like Jesus is sifting, sifting, sifting. Like he cares way less about the total numbers. And in fact, I think at least one occasion, maybe more than one occasion, they come to him and say, "Hey, they want to make you king." And his response is like, "Okay, let's go. Like let's go to the next town or something." And it's like he's constantly doing things to draw people in and then d taking a stand that like pushes people away. And I see TLC having that very same dynamic where like a lot of people get sucked into TLC and they're like, this is awesome, this is awesome. And then someone says something and they're like, there's that kind of person here. Boom, I'm out. I'm done. And it's this sifting. It's this sifting. And it can only happen through time. It's not like it's not your sudden snap and then skyrocket to success. Like, oh yeah, we've grown. And anyway, sorry, that's a whole lot. I just yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much detachment as a call to attach to something secure. Um, like, and you're right. I think that is what Christianity is. The Lord's Prayer, Our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done. So I think sometimes that I mean my prayers, but not very often. But I think that's the game. It would be like an analogy I might use is if I let's say your friend really loves well, I'm in Minnesota, so the Minnesota Vikings, and I was like, I love the Vikings. They are the best, they are awesome. I actually don't like the Vikings, but anyways, they are awesome. And you're like, okay, cool. You wouldn't question that. And I say, like, I watch all the games. You're like, okay, you really like the Vikings. And they're so good. If they win, I'm gonna keep living. If they lose, I'm out of here. Seppuku, if they lose the next game, you would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I understand you like the Vikings, but maybe you're putting too much, like you're having too much of your attachment to the Vikings. Um, so like all of your friends would think you're crazy for doing that. Um, but instead, our attachments aren't to like our favorite sports team, although it could be. It's to who gets elected, the health of my wife, um, how things go with my church, the success of my whatever job thing I have going on our project. Instead, we attach to those things, thinking that those are the secure things. It's I started reading Boethius's On the Consolation of Philosophy. Oh, I think we talked about that. So I'm slowly going through that, and the um in the book, philosophy, philo, love, and Sophia. Sophia is wisdom personified. So she's the counselor to Boethius, who's lost a lot of the things that he was attached to. But just a very slow chapter by chapter of her explaining to him why, like, his attachment to whatever the thing was, shouldn't have been he shouldn't have been so set on whatever that thing is, and that it was more transitory and fleeting than he thought it was.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, and it's people go, well, was he a Christian or not? But I think definitely a Christian message. Um, and I'm not Buddhist. I don't know a lot about Buddhism, but they're very much about that, detachment. I think from what I've heard, detachment from the world and desires. It would be interesting to ask one of them, is there like, what do you attach to then?
That's the question. Yeah. Um, I have to pray focused on something. I can't clear my mind. Nothing is nothing. I mean, like if I empty my mind and it's just empty, then can I not fill it with something better than emptiness? So that's the difference
Yeah,
between prayer and meditation for me is that I want to be filled with something better than myself or better than emptiness.
yeah. Although sometimes prayer is kind of difficult. Sometimes, sometimes it feels better not to pray, at least for me. Um, but I know it's still good.
So where did you want to steer the conversation? Because I know you had a few particular things.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk more about. Do you remember the specific thing that surprised me?
Is my stance on abortion.
Oh, okay. Um, well, I think we talked about that a little bit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of why, like, what about that surprised me? Um,
I've never met a person that has my stance ever.
well, maybe I'd have to better understand your stance.
Okay.
Because my take on it was I think I have heard similar things expressed, but maybe I didn't understand it well.
Yeah. I think on one vein, I'm tempted to say I'm just a pragmatist with the stance,
Okay.
but I think that's secondary. I think it actually I think abortions the way I think of abortion speaks to the heart of how I think about all reality. Um, I'm going to quote Luke 15:7. There will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. So, my stance on abortion is flat out. I believe life begins at conception. I believe abortion is murder. I believe abortion should be legal in the first trimester. I am open to arguments that it should even be legal in the second trimester, although, no, I think it needs a time limit. Um, God gave Mary a choice.
Maybe.
Well, it depends on your theology, I suppose. But in my theology, God gave Mary a choice.
It seems like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and Grimgriz has this thing where he says, oh, it's not Grimgriz actually. It's Babylon 5. I'm going back to Babylon 5. There's this, there's a certain people that are aboard a space station, and this people, their their home country or their home planet, but their home country has been fully occupied and fully enslaved by the occupiers. And the those that are aboard the space station that are still free, they're using their meager resources to organize on behalf of the resistance, the resistance. And because they're actually free, but there's only a few hundred of them on the space station and they're, ways away. And of course, the provisional government, so the occupying force, they appoint someone as the governing authority to come over to the space station of this people in order to properly govern these 100 or 200 that are free, but someone who's in a position of authority by the occupying force to say, hey, this is your new authority on this space station. Now, the existing authority of those 200 or so people on the space station, the existing authority The occupying force has demanded that he return for trial and judgment and probably execution. And to get him to return, they begin arresting the families and harassing the families of everyone who's aboard the space station. And they arrest the families back there at the home planet, in order to convince the 200 to say, "Hey, you got to give yourself up because my family is being arrested." And of course, the leader, he's an honorable man, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right. I do have to give myself up because it's unacceptable that other people are suffering and dying on my behalf." And so the new guy who's taking his place comes in and he gives them a speech and he says like, "There will be a time for resistance, but now is not that time. We must bide our time. We must, because your families are being harassed and he ends his speech with saying, because is there nothing more important than their safety?" And one guy in the crowd raises his hand and he says, "There is perhaps one thing." And then the scene ends, and it's a very dramatic thing. It's like, okay, what's the thing that matters more than their safety? And when the original leader who's about to go and face trial and judgment and execution, when he's about to leave the space station, one by one, they line up and they say, his name is Jakar. They say, "Jakar, you can't go. Like you are needed here." And one by one they need it. And Jakar, like, he gets really frustrated. He's like, "What the heck? Like your own families are being arrested and persecuted on my behalf." And it's like, and they say to him like, "No, no, no. The one thing you have taught us is that there's something actually more important than their safety and that their life, and that's freedom, or the freedom to make choices." And it's like they are in our family's suffering. They know they're taking on that same responsibility of the voluntary suffering on behalf of someone else, so that someone else might be changed or, might be saved. And I go back to that line from Luke chapter 15, verse 7. Like, I take Jesus literally, okay, in that line. There will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. Chad sent just yesterday, as a small group of us, that he sent a testimony of a young woman. She's probably in her mid 20s now, and she was going down witchcraft rabbit trail, basically punk rock and all these things, and just a wild and crazy life, and living a polyamorous lifestyle. She gets pregnant from her boyfriend's from her boyfriend, and she was raised conservative Christian, this woman. And she's really considering what to do because she's in this polyamorous lifestyle. Of course, her parents won't understand. She's doing all sorts of terrible things, and she has the choice. And for whatever reason, she makes the right choice. She's given the choice. She's given the opportunity to make the wrong choice, and she makes the right choice. And now her and her husband are practicing Christians. They got married. They are raising their second child. She's a stay-at-home mom. He's supporting the family. And her greatest passion is the pro-life movement. Now, everything I just said is very different than supporting, or sorry, than not supporting the pro-life movement, or not supporting. And this gets back to my political philosophy. So I gotta read what I wrote, and then by all means, Risto, you can come at me. You could pick this apart, but I know you're a friendly guy. But we can. So what I believe in is the maximal responsibility pushed down to the lowest level of every hierarchy, down to the individual. And I think my political philosophy, the the one of the cornerstones of it is Cain and Abel. When God says to Cain, "If you do well, would you not be accepted?" or what it means to be a Christian is like you pick up your cross and you carry it uphill. Like I want the maximum opportunity for sin that is permissible at a societal level down to the level of the individual. There's this trap that we often fall into where we think if we give maximal authority to the higher levels of principality, then that means if I give my authority over to a president or a mayor or a police force or whatever it is, then that means Neal Jordan, I am not responsible or accountable for my own sins because I gave that decision making over to and I think that's an illusion. I think when we do that, that's an illusion that we are all accountable to every decision and indecision and everything. Like I believe everything matters that we do all the way down. And instead of shying away from that, my political philosophy, that's what I'm calling it. I don't even know if that's the right term. My philosophy is like, no, no, no. The answer is like we go straight into that. Like I want to live in a society where people are called to the highest possible standard, the highest impossible level standard, which I think is the whole purpose of Jesus coming down to earth is to call us to that impossible standard so that not only is it excellence that we strive towards, it's beyond excellence. It's such a high bar that's set that we can do everything in our power to try to reach it and never reach a point where we're like, what's the point in living? Like there's nothing left to do. It's like, no, no, no. There's so much left to do. And at the same time, like I would say the simple way to describe me is like I am I try to be maximally tolerant. And to the point where like yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, no. I think I did ask about that, kind of what the boundaries were of your tolerance. Um, it's like as you explain all this, part of me is like, well, Neil, have you ever heard of Anabaptism? I feel I feel like you should. You're getting awfully close to the boundaries of their political thought. Uh, like I feel like you would be pretty at home there, um, because they kind of just check out of politics, uh, and they're like, well, I just have to, we just we lead our Christian life, and we just let God sort out all the political stuff, and that's about it.
I don't check out of politics though, I guess you could say.
Right.
What I believe is that we have a level of responsibility in proportion to the level of body that we're part of, and some people are going to be part of the political system and part of government, and we are part of the society for better or for worse. So, for instance, or just to give you an example, like I think we have a duty. I don't think religious exemption really exempts us of this. I think we have a duty for active military service for our country. We don't have a country without the capacity to defend that country. Now you could,
That's where they would disagree with you.
yeah. So I'm not an
They would just
Anabaptist.
say they would say our country's, our citizenship is elsewhere. Um,
Sure.
but obviously, not all Christians agree with them. They would say like dual citizenship. But
I wrote down a statement. Did the politics of Jesus's day prevent Jesus and his followers from living out their faith? So what I mean by that is like, was Jesus forced to pick the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots? Did he side with the Romans? Did he side with No, he sided with the Samaritans. Why did he side? No, no, but that's my point is like, and people say that Jesus was apolitical. I don't really think that's the case either. He simply said, render unto whatever body what is due, you know. And I think the things that are due the state are due the state, and I think there's a purpose for the state. I'm not an anarchist, and there's a need for government, but my principle, yeah, I think it's pretty closely in line with the Catholic principle of subsidiarity, which is you push the level of decision making down to the lowest level of the hierarchy that can responsibly make that choice. So I'm actually quite happy. Now, this would irritate a lot of people, but I'm quite happy that the abortion debate has been pushed down to the states in the United States. I think that's the right answer for a body that cannot achieve consensus at the national level. So that we have a better chance of staying together as a body to the extent we're able to push that decision down further the structural hierarchy. And it's not a primary purpose of the state to decide the social values of the people. Well, I don't feel it is. I feel the primary purpose of the state is to protect and in the primary purpose of let's say the frame of a body or the structure of a body is to support the body and protect the body from the outside, is to discern what comes in and what goes out. Um, that's the primary purpose.
Well, if we're talking like a physical body, that is definitely a major. It is a crucial purpose, but also there's a bunch of other positive purposes as well. Right?
Mhm.
Like breaking down nutrients and creating
But
enzymes and reproducing and everything else.
but each of those is done at a more specific level than the body as a whole. It's done at a level that serves the entirety of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know how much you want to get. We can get into the abortion stuff. I definitely would have tons of questions. I don't know how far down that you would like to go. I definitely agree with like that human beings start at conception. Um, and that I mean, you use strong language that like people are going to be a little bit happy with your take politically, but really
I don't
not,
think so.
but not super happy. Well, I mean, actually, I do know, I think there are a lot of people that, I think they're probably okay if you consider it murder, just as long as you allow them to do it, or other people to do it. Um, but I do agree with you, like on the principle level. Um, I don't like, I don't know. I would have trouble squaring that with all the rest of what we allow for legally. Um,
Let me give you another. I'll give you another example. Uh, it's probably a bad example, but would there be fewer babies dying if we outlawed it outright? Yes. Certainly there would be fewer babies dying.
if you criminalize it,
Correct. Yeah.
which yeah.
Would there be more mothers dying if we outlawed it? No, I think we have an answer to that question. That question can actually be answered with data prior to Roe v. Wade.
Well, I mean, I guess you have to compare that data. I don't know the data, right?
Mhm,
Because the procedures and medications aren't totally safe, is my understanding. And I've never looked into, um, but we could grant it for like for discussion purposes that that more mothers were dying before Roe versus Wade.
mhm. Yep. I think of it also in relation to parental rights and responsibilities. Um, I believe that parental rights are sacred, like very sacred. And now, do I think that a society or a culture or a people has a right to interfere where children are being directly abused? Yes, I do think so. But I set that bar very, very, very high. And we have treaded upon that bar into the trans rights debate very far. And it varies by state, of course, but we've yeah, it's interesting because if you push the trans right debate all the way to its limit, at what point does the fetus get to scream, I want to live? You know what I mean? So like if I can say I'm an opposite sex or gender at age 5 or 8, then at what point is it from the time you speak? That, so this is the, this is why I put such strong stock into the rights of parents, um, in the right of self-determination for mothers. Um, my instinct is far less towards punishment and it's far more towards grace. Um, yeah, I don't know. I cannot fully and logically defend my position. And the reason I say that is because if you weighed out the total number of babies that would be saved, weighed out, man, that's so horrible. If you counted the total number of babies that would be saved, and you counted the total number of mothers that would be, let's say, that would put themselves in positions that would put their lives in jeopardy, as we have evidence to prior to 1960, I forget the exact year of Roe v. Wade. Um, those are not the same numbers. There are fewer attempted abortions, illegally attempted abortions. There are, yeah.
Well,
Uh,
yeah,
mhm,
if you look at the numbers, I think my generation, Gen X, and then Millennial
mhm.
and Gen Z, I looked at these recently. Um, I think it's like a quarter to a third of each of those generations um, didn't make it because of abortion. So
Yeah,
um,
that sounds about right.
that's a lot.
Yep.
Um,
I think my instinct for grace has to do with how I see the procession from Old Testament to New Testament and to Jesus himself, um, where Jesus comes to say, think not I come to abolish the law, but I come to fulfill the law. And you could think of that fulfillment of the law. The simplest way I think about that fulfillment of the law is I will write the law in their hearts and they will be my people and I will be their God. And or another way of putting that is like the original law is like you got to follow the rules. Can't do this. You can't do that. If you do this, you repent in this way. You atone in this way. It's all the rules. 280 some rules. And it's like, yes, I am a child. While I'm a child, I am confined to the bounds of the box. I respect my father while I'm confined to the bounds of the box.
yeah, it's
But the
curfew.
problem, yeah, but the
It's
problem
curfew.
is,
You don't need curfew if you're not going to go out and and do whatever you're going to do past
Mhm.
10:30.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the box is that it doesn't tell you what you should do.
Mhm.
It tells you what you shouldn't do, or if you do something that you shouldn't do, then how to make up for what you. Um, but it does not. Um, how do I say this? Yeah, it does not tell you what you should do, and that's really the New Testament in a nutshell, and the life of Christ in a nutshell is like, here's what you should do, and
Mhm.
the adulting, I think, and this is where I'm a super boomer. Like I get in this debate with more traditional friends of mine, where to be an adult is to get out of the box, so to speak, to leave your parents' tent, to go out into the desert, to make the mistakes one way or the other, and to be allowed to make those mistakes. Like the prodigal son is case in point of this. For all intents and purposes, the younger son wishes his father to be dead. That's basically what he's asking when he says, "Give me my 50%." It's basically like, "You're dead to me, Dad. Give me the portion that." And amazingly, the father gives that to him. And now one part of me that's very, very cynical is like, men gave women the right to abort so that men could have more unconstrained sex with women. That's the really cynical part of me.
Well,
Yeah.
I saw something recently because I've been radicalized on this topic in the past few years.
Mhm.
But I saw something recent, so it's in my feed now.
Mhm.
And I haven't checked the numbers, but the guy was saying that like 70% of women report pressure from the men in their life to get abortions. Um, so,
That's
you know,
horrible. Yeah.
like as a rapist, you would love it. You know, problem solved if there's a pregnancy.
I think if we lived in a society where it was possible to do safely, but there was overwhelming social and societal pressure to say, please don't do this. Please save the child. Please be willing to take on the responsibility. And because I was thinking about this, and abortion's the attitude of, if I personally can't receive this as a gift, then no one should be allowed to receive this as a gift. No one who's attempting to adopt a child, no one. I am the only one that's capable of choosing whether I accept this as the gift that it is. And I can't give that away as, I'm not saying it's not I'm not saying it's not the hardest thing that any woman will ever do to give up their child for adoption. It'll be the hardest thing that you ever do. I'm not saying that. But this gets to my tolerance thing. Like this gets to my Christian thing. Jesus asks ridiculous things of us that by any normal modern standard are impossible and absurd. And we think, oh, if we can just take out this small cluster of cells now, I can just blot it from my memory and I never have to think about it ever again. And in reality, the opposite is true. It's like it's accepting the greatest responsibility, which is the greatest adventure. Yeah. Um, so I am staunchly in favor of people accepting that adventure and that responsibility, but I'm even more in favor of them having the choice to that Mary made to freely say yes when there's a an option for no. And I the last thing I'll say on this, God gives us the right to sin. Like at the end of the day, so any way you slice it, the way I see God, God does not escape responsibility for giving us the right to sin. Like you could say, well, that's not of God, that's of the devil, and that's of the demons and all this stuff. And you can say that. But at the end of the day, God created the devil. God created demons. He created the mechanism that allowed them the agency to fall into sin and allowed them the agency to choose other than God. And the question is like, why would God even allow them to do that? Like, why couldn't God create a world or a extrapolated heavenly universe where the angels could choose different things and there was diversity of opinion, but it was all good. We had diversity and unity, but it was all good, and you would still be choosing God in this myriad of, and to be like, well, God couldn't do that because that world would be impossible. It's like I'm not going to presume to know what God can or cannot do, you
Well,
know.
isn't that the Christian view of heaven, or at least the standard Christian view of heaven?
But then where does
Is
evil come from?
no, but what I'm saying is like the picture in most Christians' view of heaven is that we're in heaven
Mhm,
and there's no more sin. Like it's done away with. Like,
mhm.
but if you were to ask them, well, do you then not have free choice in heaven? They would say, no, you still do, but there's no sin, right? Like it seems like the view of heaven is like Eden without the tree.
I love C.S. Lewis's just further up and further in that I think the running joke this is just a guess on my part, but the running joke for me would be something like you get to heaven and it's just the weight of responsibility that you had in this life. It's just like, okay, one talent, now you get 10. You know, your talent just goes up 10, you're not talent, but your responsibility, right? So it's like you get to heaven, you're expecting to be on a beach sipping a Mai Tai, and it's like, no, 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 all that work in the vineyard that you did, like that, we're gonna do a lot more now. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
That's anyway.
Yeah, that's good. Um, so I mean, I didn't ask you very many questions, and I'm slow. Like that's how I learn things is just to ask a ton of questions.
Sure.
Right now, it feels like your view is like a circle with
Mhm.
one tiny little slice cut out.
Yeah.
Um, and to me, that doesn't make sense. But also, you're not the king of this country. If you were, I would say I would probably plead more for that first trimester. Um, but
But what I yearn for is okay. Or another way of putting what I'm dreading is like top down. What I dread is top down enforced repentance, or which means we're going to clean out the riffraff of our country versus a bottom up,
yeah,
genuine, inward out,
yeah,
me myself repentance. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And that's what I mean by Jesus wants our hearts and not our compliance. That's what I mean by being adults. And the reason this gets to why I think God allows evil, really. I think the whole point of agency, the whole point is that he doesn't want followers in the end. He wants what he calls his disciples, like I now call you friends. You got to start, you got to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And you could say, well, we're not even at the point of allowing the bad to happen because something bad will happen. But the problem is, like, we're always at the point of something bad will happen, you know? And it's actually the same way I think of gun control in the same way. Like, I am a, I very much support the Second Amendment. Do I personally own a weapon? No, I personally do not. I have reasons for that. But like, do I feel safer in my neighborhood knowing that like there are plenty of people here in Louisiana that like, yeah, yeah, I feel safer with them around. Absolutely. Yeah, and knowing I've neighbors that I could rely on and depend on in a crunch. Absolutely. So I'm grateful for it, even though I myself choose not to. Like I'm grateful for the right that I could if I felt it were necessary, you know. Um, and that's what I mean by pushing the maximal responsibility down to the level of the individual. I actually worry less about something like real like civil strife breaking out across the entire US. I worry less about that because of how heavily armed the United States is. You know, like that has a limiting like if things really got out of hand, it's like, well, like we don't necessarily need the police to enforce order.
yeah. There's a lot of deer
So
hunters out there. Yeah, it's tying it back to what we were talking to at the beginning about
yeah.
where is our trust.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's easy for our trust to be in the Christian world if we could just influence it so that our laws align with what we want and win elections and those kind of things, then um, then we will have achieved uh, a very important thing. And I don't want to dismiss that too quickly because I do think that the laws matter. I do think that justice matters in a country. But a lot Christians have been in Russia under communism. They were in the Roman Empire in a pagan law system. So I think this is where I think the Anabaptists are right, where their hope is not in whatever political system wherever they're at, radically so, you know. Um, and I think, yeah, what's the major problem? Is the major problem that our laws allow for abortion, or that or that we're so we're so enamored with sex and convenience that we would even uh, kill our own children. Um, so, and I'm not going to kill my children. I don't have plans to, but I am also enamored with convenience and many of the other American things that I would say cut counter to Christianity. Um, so I agree with you. Like, I think, well, I mean, like David says in Psalm, is it 53? What's the one where he's like talking about creating me a clean heart, oh God? 51 or 53, anyways, um, where he's praying after Nathan confronted him. And he says, David says, like, in his prayer, he says, you don't want bulls. You don't want sacrifices, or else I would have brought them. You want a repentant heart. Um, so just echoing what you were saying is like God's interest, primary interest is in like where my heart is at. And but then David does later on at the end say, I think he goes on at the end and talks about, and then after that, after the heart's set right, then then the sacrifices will bring those, and it will be in the right spirit. So you could even envision a situation where Christianity wins out politically, but our hearts aren't in the right spot,
Yeah.
and like David's talking about, that's not a big win, I don't think.
Yeah. Um, Another way of putting it is I hope for maximal separation of church and state. And that's like the highest possible standard. I really value Catholicism for holding the line on pretty much everything. You know, all male priests, um, nature of sin, mortal sin in relation to the Eucharist, all those things. Um, I value the Catholic Church holding that line despite immense pressure, um, but not overtly. You know, obviously there's individual Catholics that want to change laws, but not overtly getting involved in the politics of nations. And I think to the extent that the church does get involved in the politics of nations, like under Mussolini that PVK talks about all the time, to the extent that it does that, it fails in this in the stewardship of its people. And they're meant to be set apart, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, having been someone that's explored Catholicism, like I've pondered to myself, I've wondered, and I love many things about Catholicism, but I've wondered, maybe the Catholic Church is the one true church, and she's just wrong about some things about herself, um, uh, which I don't know. I feel like that kind of applies to all people. Um, so. Because that hasn't been the history, right, in the Catholic Church entirely. But I do agree with you, not just the Catholic Church, when churches get super involved with running the state, it doesn't seem to it doesn't seem to fit with the DNA of Christianity, and maybe even going back further, you see it in the DNA of Israel as well. Like we have that push to do that. Like Israel asked for kings, but God seems to like want the relationship, but then we want kind of his permission to rule over everything, um, and give his like stamp of on our government. Um, that does reflect a lot on what you said about like pushing it down to the lowest level, and I mean the lowest level is my eye. what's in my eye. And I forget that a lot.
Yeah, no, I found Psalm 51, but I'll read it if you like.
Okay, sure.
Psalm of David, when the prophet Nathan came to him after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions, and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight. That's really interesting that he says you only. Yeah, I think he sinned against Uriah, but he doesn't mention Uriah.
Well,
Nor does he give up Bathsheba. He doesn't give her up, you know?
no, no. And is everything spoken in the Psalms like infallible? Is every
Yeah.
voice that I don't know. But maybe I feel like David, knowing David, right? I feel like there is something he's probably poking at with that one, that if you pull that thread, you might agree with it. Um,
But this is interesting, right? So I think David's being somewhat hypocritical here. And I think this is why he experiences the consequences of his actions. I really think this. So he says, create me in pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. That's nice to create in me a pure heart. But then David says, then I will teach transgressors your ways, so that sinners will turn back to you. Deliver me from the guilt of bloodshed, O God, you who are my God. And he's basically saying, like, you know, make me pure of heart, and in return, I'm going to teach transgressors your ways. But he doesn't he doesn't repent from what I mean by that is he doesn't give up Bathsheba. He doesn't fully repent after that sin. He could say he's sorry for killing Uriah, but yeah,
right, right. Well, and God performs an abortion. Um, uh, well, that I don't know. I don't know tons about Jewish law. If he were to give her up, like that might have been a second evil, um, because she needed someone to presumably take care of her. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I don't know if he had a prescription there or if he was willing to give her up or not. Um,
maybe
yeah,
some of our Jewish brothers will weigh in and
yeah, that
correct
would
me
be.
in my sinful interpretations.
No, I mean, it's an interesting question though.
Mhm.
Yeah, what would his penance have looked like?
Yeah, I mean, I know he fasted and he begged for his son's life for 7 days, I think. Yeah, I know he cared. Um,
Yeah, and Bathsheba did bear him another son, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and who was that? It was
Solomon.
yeah, so
That's that's the big guy. Then the next big guy.
but God does there is definitely a sense where God works in the mess.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
he's
I
not it's not just all saints.
there's another reason why I think this way. Um, all of this is like the first time I'm really unpacking all my beliefs in regard to this. So they're going to be a little bit rough. I feel convicted about the things I believe and why, but it is going to be rough because I don't talk this frankly, ever. So, um, but I think it's good. Like after being in the space for 2 years, I think it's like I do believe in TLC and I believe it's good to be as fully known as we can be. And I do want people in the space who I care about to know me honestly, like what I think and why. And I feel like that's important. And I feel like I'm at a place in relation to TLC and the people within it that I feel it's a good time to bear myself more fully, you could say. So I appreciate the opportunity, Rista, that you're giving me.
Yeah, well, and I think there's something about um there's a trust, part of Christian community is that, and what I long for is to be part of a community where people have a shared, like you said, that your conception of Christianity, like that we have a shared idea of what the rules are of the game that we're
Mhm.
playing. Even if I don't always follow those rules, um, or feel like I'm just crappy at it, but like that idea that like if you felt like God said, Neal, you know, you need to change your view on this thing, that you at least agree, like, yeah, that's the way I should go. Maybe I wrestle with that, maybe I struggle with that, but that is the way forward.
And that
Um,
has happened to me before about other things. That has happened to me directly where it's like, oh, my belief on this thing is wrong and God has corrected me. So I know it can happen.
yeah, like, and if like if God were to communicate to me, like, hey, I well, there was a time in my life where was not too long ago where I really did consider the abortion issue and took it to the scriptures and thought about it and was open to, like, well, like if it's okay, then it's okay. I'm gonna be okay with it if God's okay with it. Who am I to say? Um, so
Okay. So
yeah,
here's the other thing. This is a thing I intuit that I don't think most people think of it this way. And I think because I intuit this, what I'm about to say, that it's one of the reasons that I think this way. So I think most people look back on civil rights and they think that what made civil rights happen was the marches and the speeches and all of those actions to persuade people. You know, the marches and the speeches, and I have a dream, and all of this. I don't think that's correct. I think what actually persuaded people is enough evidence, enough confrontation of suffering of a certain group of people that when confronted with the evidence of the suffering of what, like, quote unquote, the other side, what their side was doing, I think that's what changed their hearts. Like, would we Christians be releasing dogs onto these people? Would we be beating them with sticks? Would we be, you know, this like Uncle Tom's Cabin is like that was Civil War, but that a sufficient amount of evidence of or a sufficient amount of seeing the suffering of the other and what and it's like Cain saying to God, my suffering is more than I can bear. And God's answer to that is like, yep, but you got to bear it. Like that's it. And I think that that's really what changes people is the witness of the suffering of other people. And it's not the top down like speeches and conversations. There's some of that, to be sure. There's some of that. But when someone else, especially on your behalf, and I'm thinking about Jesus in this case, when someone else voluntarily suffers on your behalf, like there's nothing that really changes someone like that. To be like, wow, that person really did that for me or is going through that or and yeah. So that's how I think about things like civil rights. It's like that freedom was earned through the suffering of African Americans over generations. Like it was something that, yeah. Anyway, and the same thing. I think women in the United States who have gone through abortions are usually the best advocates and the best persuaders of other women. Say like, yeah, I'm gonna walk with you. Like I'm gonna road to Emmaus this thing, and I'm gonna walk with you.
Yeah, and the question, like the legal stuff set aside, the question is like, what does it do to our societal heart? I think it's one of our cancers. I think we have a lot of cancers right now, you know. Um, but what does it do to a man to use a woman for sex and then pressure her to get rid of the child? What does it do to a woman to get rid of the child? Um, those probably aren't great things for those people on
Yeah,
that part of the equation. But but then also, what does it do for me to own an iPhone, knowing where that maybe comes from? So I think it's part of a bigger, I think it's part of a much larger picture. I think just putting prayer in schools and outlawing abortions is not any major fix to where we're at.
yeah. I think a society is only as strong as the collective heart of its people, you
Yeah.
know. I wrote down, I want to attempt to emulate the patience and long suffering of God.
Mm.
And that's the attempt. And I also thought of the woman caught in adultery. It's like, oh, we know what we got to do. This is what Moses said, right? We got him, God. We got her. We got her. Let's righteous justice. It's righteous. Let's do it. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Well, that shouldn't be in the canon.
Oh, that particular story, we just take it out of the gospel. Yeah, that shouldn't be in there.
Well, I think it might be a late edition. I don't know. I'm not a biblical scholar, but I thought I heard that. Isn't that one of the, I'm not sure if it was in the earliest manuscripts,
Hmm.
but I'm okay not having to be the one throwing the stones, at least sometimes. I
Ah,
guess.
because we give that level of principality up now to a higher body where, yep, we're okay with our government enforcing prison time for doctors that do this or for women that go through it. We're okay, but we're not actually willing to go to prison with them or walk with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any other questions on your end for this or anything you want to discuss about this? I
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Sure, sure. Fire away. I feel like, yeah, I called you this conversation. I apologize. I've been doing all the talking the entire time.
No, that's
So,
no,
mm.
that is good. It was good. What are your favorite movies?
Oh, yeah, I can give you about a top 10.
Oh, okay.
Um, I love Casablanca as a romance. I think, my
Mm,
favorite romance, Humphrey Bogart. Actually, it's a very Christian movie in a lot of ways because he voluntarily kind of gives up his love for her, self-sacrifice. Yeah, I love Titanic for the same reason. Like I really really love Titanic, more than most straight men will admit. But I love Titanic. Um, The Matrix. The Matrix was the film that really blew the lid off my imagination in terms of as a teenager. It came out when I was 14. I think I didn't see it in theaters because it was rated R. And my parents were actually pretty strict about that sort of thing. But I think I saw it when I was 15 or 16 and it caught me something fierce because I was a computer geek. Um, another one of my favorites is Al Pacino movie. The one Al Pacino movie he actually got an Oscar for, but it's not well known. It's called Scent of a Woman.
mm.
It's really good.
I've I've heard the title. I haven't seen it.
I think it's got the single best speech of any movie at the end of the at the end of the movie by Al Pacino. It's
Mm,
so good, so good. Um, let's see, Groundhog Day as a comedy. I love Groundhog Day.
yeah.
Um,
Ironically, super rewatchable.
yeah. Now I'm gonna say this, but this kind of shows who I am, and it's not flattering. I love the movie Bad Santa,
Mm,
which is like the raunchiest movie that you'll ever see. Just about the worst. It's almost rated like it's as raunchy as it gets. And it's actually a Christian movie
Mm.
because by the end of this, like this kind of shows me in a nutshell. Like this guy is so fallen. Like this guy who plays Santa Claus and like chain smokes and only plays Santa Claus so he can rob malls at the end, and that's like his only work every year. And and for lack of a better word, like he repents and like genuinely tries to do the right thing at the end of the movie, and it's beautiful. But it's like that's what I mean. Like most goody good Christians are not willing to kind of stare into the darkness or go deep into the darkness with someone that's all the way down there. And I'm not saying that I'm willing either. Like I don't want to do that. But like what I'm saying is there's hope and those are people too. And the people who are like the bottom dregs of like I would never associate or touch that person with a 10-foot pole because they're just pure bad and evil all the way down. And it's like I I don't believe that Jesus's grace has any bounds. And I don't believe that when we are personally called to do something, um, I don't believe that that has any bounds either. And um, anyway, so I think that's why I still love that movie. I haven't watched it since I become a Christian because it's like very like I said, it's about as raunchy as you can possibly get. But it's a redemption story.
Mm.
So anyway, um, yeah, no that's a good mix. That's a good mix. What about
Yeah,
you?
that is quite a mix. Um, well, my number one favorite movie is a surfing documentary called The Endless Summer 2.
Huh. Two? So it's a
Two.
sequel? Oh, two.
Yeah, two. It's a sequel.
Oh, two.
The first one was made in 1964, and then the second one was made in 1994. Um, and it's a surfing documentary, but also kind of not really. It's that's the canvas that the movie is, made on. Um, but it's kind of like a story of friendship, and they travel around the world surfing, and then the narration and the writing is just in the humor is just very unique. The guy who made it was a very unique fellow, and he just also loved um, surfing. So it's like an ode as well. So you get that spillover of someone that just loves a thing so much. It inspired me to go surfing on my honeymoon. Um, so I had I watched it in college. There was a guy that worked at the video store, and he brought it was a cassette tape back then. He brought the cassette tape and he showed it in our dorm room, and we watched it, and we were like, "Oh man, that was really good." And then we went and got a few other guys, and we're like, "You guys, you got to come watch this movie. It's a surfing movie." And then they watched it, and then we got a few more guys, and we're like, we had double-decker couches, and we're like, we filled up those couches. Probably watched it like 10 times the first week. Um,
Wow. And you got
yeah.
none of you guys even surfed?
No, no,
Wow.
this was in Kansas. Yeah,
Amber waves of grain. Gotta
that's
surf
right.
those things.
Yeah. And then I really like Akira Kurosawa, Japanese director. I like tons of his stuff. So,
Yeah, Noah President Foxman has done some stuff about him, and I know
oh,
almost nothing about Kurosawa, but I've watched some of Noah's stuff about him, and it is really interesting. It deals with the depths of meaninglessness and purposelessness in life, and yeah,
some of it, some of it's more just like fun. Like he has a samurai movie where a wandering samurai walk goes into the town, and then there's these two warring factions, and then he just pits them against each other. So like some of it's just he has a good amount of variety, but but a lot of his really hit on like the like humanity. Like he touched into that really good, really well. There's one of his movies that I didn't used to love it. I watched it when I was younger, just out of college, but I rewatched it recently and then just fell in love with it. So it's called High and Low. Um, and it's I hate saying stuff about movies because I don't like people to spoil it for me. Um, I'm just trying to think of what to say without spoiling it. Um, it is really poignant for someone in midlife. Um, the main character is in midlife and has been very successful, and and the movie pushes on that some, and it's really good. The Kurosawa worked with Toshiro Mifune, who I think is the best actor of all time. I saw like
I
yeah,
Oh, I've seen with Mifune, or I think I know the actor you're talking about because I saw the original Shogun, which was a
okay,
miniseries in the 80s
yeah,
with Richard. I forget the guy's name, but I think he played the role. Mifune played the role of Shogun,
yeah.
if I'm pronouncing his name right. Um,
Yeah,
but
that was
no,
after Kurosawa and Mifune broke up, I think. Um,
ah,
they sadly they broke up. But I think I'd watched when I started watching Kurosawa stuff right after college. I'd seen three different movies with Mifune in a title role, and I didn't realize it was the same guy until like I was like at some point I was like, what? They're all this that Mifune guy? I like it kind of blew my mind.
he's like Japan's Marlon Brando or something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's and then like Babe, Pig of Destiny. I really like the Babe movie.
I haven't seen it. I don't think.
Oh, it's so
Yeah,
good.
really?
Oh, it's fantastic. Almost a perfect movie.
Wow. What's your favorite
And
Disney film? Oh, well, go ahead about Babe. You got
Disney.
me, Babe.
Disney. I mean, Disney has a lot of movies. Like are you talking about animated movies? Does Pixar count?
Yeah, yeah, like anything that you associate with Disney,
I can tell
except
you
Star
my
Wars.
I can tell you I can tell you the Disney movie I like least.
Sure,
Um,
why not?
it gave me nightmares for a month when I was a kid. Watcher in the Woods. I think that's a Disney movie.
I don't think I've seen that.
It's an 80s Disney movie. I saw it at my pastor's house.
1980. Yeah.
And the plot of Watcher in the Woods is that a group of young people are doing a seance out in an abandoned church. And then a bell falls on them or one of them, and they pick up the bell and she's gone. And then she's like trapped in some spirit world and then haunting some little girl. Yeah. So I had nightmares for a month after that.
Yeah, no, it is a the producer pitched the project to Disney executive Ron Miller, stating that this could be our Exorcist.
Yeah. Yeah. So I saw
I
this at my pastor's house.
Wow, no, I've never seen it. I only saw The Exorcist maybe 2 years ago. I watched it the day before Halloween. I it was It was quite compelling. It was quite powerful. Not one of my favorite films.
I haven't seen it. I don't want to see it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Um,
probably all for the best. But I figured if I'm Catholic, I probably should watch The Exorcist, so I did.
nice. Yeah. Shawshank Redemption is like maybe a
Yeah.
perfect movie.
I,
Um,
I would I would pick Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump has stuck with me over Shawshank. And don't get me wrong, I love Shawshank Redemption too. Also, I should say. Um, but I know Forrest Gump like won all the Oscars over Shawshank Redemption same year. But I don't know why, but Forrest Gump has always just stuck with me more. It's one of my favorites.
A great romance. You like romance. You mentioned the one a recommendation, Tiger in the Snow, with Roberto Benigni. Um, he did you ever see Life is Beautiful uh, from Roberto Benigni? It's
I don't think so.
it's the comedy set in a Holocaust concentration camp.
Nah.
That's also
Wow.
really, really good. But
Yeah, that has 8.6 on IMDb's Life is Beautiful. Wow.
yeah, but Tiger in the Snow, um, that's that's one of my favorites, especially for what it has to say about like love in kind of like a deep, meaningful way. It got terrible reviews. I don't know what it has on IMDb, but I think the Rotten Tomatoes for Tiger in the Snow was like 25% or something.
Wow.
But it's one of my favorites.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Probably misunderstood then. Um, my
Well, it
favorite, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it made part of the setting is during the Iraq War. And so like again, it was like the whole political football since it was set in the Iraq War, I think people took a political side on it and then the reviewers didn't like something about his take on that. But it's not really about that, so
Interesting. Yeah, I'll check it out. My favorite kids film is it's not a Disney film. It's called The Secret of Nim in 1982. It's not very well known, but it's a mother and her children, and they have to be evacuated in a, well, I won't spoil it, but it's
I
really good.
maybe I maybe saw it like way back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I recognize the name, but maybe it's been so long ago that I forgot what the plot was.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you ever seen My Neighbor Totoro? The
Yes. Uh, or maybe I'm confusing it with Spirited Away, but
Yeah,
I may
same studio.
I probably
Same
have to.
studio.
I think I've seen Spirited Away, but not My Neighbor Totoro, so I probably need to do that.
Yeah, Spirited Away is a little further on the LSD end of things.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Cool. Did you have any other things you wanted to bring up, talk about?
Uh, no, I mean like I don't know how much I'll get involved in the corner. It keeps there's like a magnetism about it, but also I feel like my corner should probably be more local. I should get more serious about finding a church community to be a part of, um and then just I mean it to me it's sad like how disconnected people are in churches across the board almost like whether it's Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, like whatever the flavor is.
Hmm.
Um it's pretty rare that I would hang out with a group of church people and feel like these people are family. Um, and that's, I think, how it's supposed to be. I think, like, actually see that in the corner. Um,
Yeah, what's amazing is that we seem to care about each other. That's really the test of whether someone's in the corner or not. That really is the litmus test. It's like, do we care about the person more than the things that they say or believe?
mm,
Or do we care about other people in the corner more than the specific? It's kind of this tendency to judge someone by where I disagree with them most. And like whatever the thing is about that person that pisses me off the most is that's how I ultimately judge the person. And going back to my grace bit, like that's the precise opposite that I see Jesus and God doing. I see Jesus and God basically saying, here are the Beatitudes, and here are all the ways in which you can be connected to me. Here's the myriad of ways that you'll be. And if one of these gets connected to me in that regard, it's going to serve all the other ways also. But Yeah, so I love it for that reason because we tend to really want to understand the whole and not just the low resolution representation. And it's hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one of the values for any of the criticisms that people level at the corner.
Mhm.
I get a strong sense, and this is a value of mine. So I get a strong sense that a lot of the people in the corner, it matters to them about like what's true, good, and beautiful, and they're open to hearing that from the person they're speaking with. I'm guilty, obviously, of you just get in mode of correct someone else. I've done that even recently. Um, but I think there's something really valuable to hearing from another person. And that doesn't mean that you know, I'm not going to adopt your abortion position, but I'll listen, I definitely want to listen to it and then chew on it and reflect upon that. Um, and I just think that's how it's supposed to be. Um, this would be a little spicy, but estuary doesn't really resound with me a lot. I'm not saying that right, but it doesn't really like I've watched a few. It's maybe just too structured for me. Um, but I appreciate like what it's doing or attempting to do. Um, and I think it is important for people. There's some way we have to get real with each other. I don't know if estuary accomplishes that necessarily, because I feel like I learn more about people in the corner outside of the estuary conversations. Um, I feel like the estuary conversations tend to be more idea based and oftentimes, um, oftentimes maybe over my head. I like things to be boiled down pretty simply. Um, but maybe if I was more on that wavelength, then I would appreciate that more. So maybe it just matters. It'd be interesting to see someone doing estuary with a different topic. Um, like you could even just have a topic of like what makes for good tacos, and then people to
Yeah.
say their different things, and so maybe then I would be jazzed about that estuary. Um, but I'm curious. I'll be curious to see like where yours goes.
Yeah.
And like I hope it goes well, and that people connect with it.
Mhm.
um
Yeah, I think once people get to know each other really well to a point where they can really trust getting past the small talk, getting past the small, so the estuary protocol is basically guardrails for getting past the small talk. Like inevitably you're going to get past all the incentives are to get past the small talk. And then but it's guardrails. It's like you're playing bowling with the guard, and you're gonna hit the pins one way or the other. But then once you get good at just going to the whatever the thing is without the small talk, then you could sort of cut the corners on the protocol. You could say, well, we're just gonna do intro and pitch, and then you could just say, well, let's just start talking. You can. It's like training wheels to normal bike to motorcycle or whatever. And it's
yeah,
like because we've lost the capacity to get past small talk with the typical adult stranger in the United States. Well, no, that's not in the United States. That's really worldwide, I think, or at least so it's rediscovering the lost art of voluntary vulnerability and doing it in a structured way makes it um yeah, it makes it easier because there's like a process for guiding you. And I one thing I think you'll find is if you go to one of these in-person events. So I know Luke in the Minnesota crowd, they're
right.
talking about, yeah,
Yeah,
like I would definitely go to an in-person event and see how you think about it after because in person is very different than over a screen and much superior in a number of
Mm.
ways. So, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it- definitely you have to like I would want to experience it. My gut tells me I'm still not going to come away like super sold on it. Um, I think one of the potential downsides is uh that there are that it does tend to I'm guessing it probably tends to reside in the realm of ideas, um, even without the small talk, because ideas are safer. It's um, it's less safe for me to tell you like what I'm really struggling with or failing with, or just the stuff that just sits with me on the daily, um, especially if it doesn't make me look good. Um, that's the stuff that even in Bible studies, like I found like people like to talk about the we like to talk about like the scripture, like David, about David in that psalm, and like I could bring up the idea that Nathan, he you realize when he got that call to go speak to David, he was basically signing his death warrant. Like if you go say that to the king, you better be ready to die. It's like, oh, that's an interesting insight and all of that. But that's more safe than me admitting that I don't think my heart is very willing. I think I need, that I find encouragement in that prayer that David's asking for a willing heart. And I don't have a lot of joy right now. I find encouragement in that prayer to ask for joy. Um, like so I don't know how often in estuary things come up where someone's just like I'm scared of my wife dying or God disappeared on me or whatever, those type of things.
yeah,
Um, and I feel like church is where that stuff should be coming out. Um,
yeah. Maybe if the church has a space for it to come out into, you know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, and we'll see. Time will tell. It'll be interesting. I think any connection is at least somewhat good because that stuff can come out like afterwards or,
yeah,
in a text exchange. So there is at least that.
yeah, yeah. We'll see. It's an adventure, and I believe that I'm doing it for the right reasons. Our church is doing it for the right reasons, and but on so many things, I'm open to being corrected by God. Yeah, and He does. Not as often as He used to, but He does correct me. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and like he promises to guide his people, but he doesn't say like I'm gonna lay out a roadmap. I'm gonna tell you where things are going. It's all gonna make sense and feel good. In fact, if you read the scriptures, you probably, you know, um, it's probably gonna go the opposite. So
yeah. But you do get, in my experience, I can only speak to my experience here. You get plenty of reassurance when you need it in prayer and at other times too, but often in prayer when you're unsure how you're doing or whether something's the right thing or you're doing the right thing. And if you, I really liked Peterson's when you if you sit on the edge of your bed and you earnestly ask God, like, what stupid thing are you doing in your life that could be corrected, or like what should you change? I really like that because that's in effect that's what adoration is. When I go to Eucharistic adoration once a week, Fridays. It's a great time Friday evenings because at the end of my week, and I don't do it as well now as I used to, but when I was really in the depths of the pit, so to speak, I was in going through my toughest time. I would go through that. I'd say like, how am I doing? And I'd go through the litany of all the roles and the things I have in my life. How am I doing as a father? How am I doing as a husband? How am I doing in my church? How am I doing in my job? And I still do that. But just I genuinely ask that question of God, like how, and I have a space that I can do that. And most of the time I don't receive a direct answer. But even that is a reassurance that, okay, I'm doing all right. Other times it's obvious in my conscience about something. Like I don't even need really an answer. It's just there in my conscience. And then other times and this is rare, but it happens where I do get a direct answer. It's like, oh, fuck. When I get the direct answer, you know, when when it's something that I would rather not be answered in that way, and I know it's a good thing, that's when it's really rough. That's when I know it's from God. I would rather the answer be something else. And I know and that answer is a good thing. And then it's like, okay, now I have to do it. I have to. So, um, yeah, that's anyway. But
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's I don't think we're honest enough with that stuff. Uh, where you could say to a brother or sister in Christ, and you could be like, I think God wants this from me, and I don't want that. I don't want that. You know, could you pray for me about that?
hey, it's a start, you know. It's
Yeah.
even earnestly praying for the desire to want to change in some regard, or it's a start. It's like baby steps,
Oh yeah,
whatever it is.
prayed that even recently. Please help me to want to want to want to want to want to want to do this.
It's a start, yeah. And I was talking to Chad earlier today, and I talked to Chad mo no, probably about half the days of the week. And and I said, well, what allows you to keep going? He's talking about how a lot of people fall away from AA, and it's like, well, what allows you to keep? And he's like, well, I brush my teeth every day, don't I? And I'm like, yeah, but he's like, well, you just build it in as part of your life. Like it's just part of your habitual practice. And yeah, but who knows how we have the conviction to do that for certain things. Like I don't know what gives us the conviction to do that, whatever it might be. Because there was a point in my life where I was going to mass like every single morning. I was waking up early and I was going to mass, and then I stopped doing that at some point, and I'm like, am I a bad Catholic? And then I realized I was going to mass because I had to go to mass. Like that was how I made it through the day in the depths. And then I reached a point where I knew I was getting better because I wasn't as compelled to, but then it was that reassurance that like, okay, if I'm ever in this spot again, I will go back. I can go back to the daily mass if I'm ever here in this metaphorical, metaphysical uh place,
Well, and
subjective,
yeah,
objective experience.
it may not be mass the next time, It
Mm.
might be getting into the woods a bunch or meeting with a specific person or, the gym or whatever. I don't know. Like it could be a million different things where it's like I need to be here regularly. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think it'll be the mass, but that's just me.
Hey, that's fine too. No, even though I'm not Catholic,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whenever I go to Chicago every so often. There's a monastery in Chicago, and I go to the Vesper service.
Mhm.
I I find that um, well, I've been maybe th 4 times, 4 or 5 times, and like every time I feel like God is communicating something to me while I'm there. Um, So someone might say you should become Catholic then. Well, also when I walk in the woods, I feel like God also communicates a lot when I'm there as well.
Might as well become a druid.
Or on the toilet, I've had a lot of revelations on the toilet.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Chad always calls me when I'm on the toilet, so maybe that's a revelation, but that's
Maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. Although the phone, that was always pre-cell phone days.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's one of the worst parts of cell phones probably. Is just filling in all the cracks of everything.
Yeah.
Tension. Well, it was wonderful to talk.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
too, Risto. Yeah. We got to do it again sometime. I hope you do stay active in the corner. I really do, because I like you. I think you're a good presence in the corner. I think you have some good insights, and a you're very receptive and gentle, and I think you're good at welcoming diverse perspectives like my own. So thank you.
Well, I'm not always that way, especially in the text side of things. I have to be way slower to speak. So, um, yeah. But and I like y'all in the corner, even if I'm not crazy involved. I do. I mean, it's like temptation, you know.
Yeah.
It's like the super good taco stand while you're on a diet. You know, you have Nick doing Chesterton stuff, and I'm like, oh man, that's uh that's
That's how
catnip
we
for me.
get you.
I
Yeah.
know. Yep.
All
All
right.
right.
Stay on. I'll stop the recording.